Okay, so thank you for staying with us. To help us reflect on what we've just seen, we are honored to welcome an exceptional panel this evening. The discussion will be moderated by Nick Spicer, Europe editor at NPR. He will be joined by Rodrigo Diamanti, Venezuelan human rights activist, director and president of Un Mundo Sin Mordaza. Claire Meynial, US correspondent for Le Point. And Emiliana Duarte, Venezuelan journalist in exile, former managing editor and co-founder of Caracas Chronicles, currently working on communications with Maria Corina Machado's team. We are very grateful to all of them for being here and for sharing their expertise and perspectives with us tonight. Nick, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm sorry for being slow. Thank you.
No. Take your time.
Thank you, everybody, for braving the burst water pipe or whatever caused all the traffic delays. There we go. Sorry. Apologies. Yeah, thank you all for coming. Can you hear me? Is that loud enough? This microphone is that good? Thank you. Can I ask, are there any NYU students here? Okay. Anybody from Venezuela? Okay, great. Just to know who is in the public. Well, we have a really interesting panel here. So 2 people from Venezuela who are very well experienced in the political life, and indeed were active in the political life of the country. We were just me. And Claire, who's been reporting recently from the region, from the border on Colombia. I'd like to maybe just ask you quickly, what did you think of the movie? Was it accurate? Start with you.
Well, I will first start by acknowledging my privilege right now in being able to speak in front of you here, which is a privilege that many Venezuelans do not have not had for years, and I personally didn't have until a little over a month ago, when Maduro was captured. Speaking out, even though I am in exile, means possibly risking the safety and the lives of my family. And my loved ones. So that in and of itself is something that I think I just want to acknowledge, because it's many things have been unprecedented so far this year, but that is one thing that I personally celebrate, that I'm able to be here and speak on behalf of Venezuelans. I thought the movie had a lot of glaring factual errors, which I will happily go into if you so desire. But I think what was most missing from the movie is the people, the Venezuelan people. There's interviews of, there's a huge romanticization of Chavez, who was responsible for the tragedy that Maduro later exacerbated. But the people in Venezuela who have been suffering under these dictatorships for the past 26 years, who have been incarcerated, tortured, a third of the population has had to flee, mothers who don't know where their children are because they've been disappeared, the people's resilience, the people's peaceful resistance in the face of such brutality, such unscrupulous brutality. And then, of course, this documentary, I'm assuming production stopped right before the elections, but it was, again, the people who massively went out into the streets to make their will be known, again, peacefully through the votes in elections that were stolen. So that's what I think about the movie.
The audience doesn't need to have it pointed out that Joe Biden is no longer president, and Maduro is not quite indestructible and is no longer president either.
He is in jail.
Yeah. Rodrigo, what did you think?
Well, I think that the most beautiful part of being here is to talk about a documentary called the Indestructible Maduro while he's in jail. So it's an honor for me to be here because of that. And thank you everybody for your interest. I was surprised that only a few were Venezuelans. Thank you for caring of what is happening in our country. My opinion about this horrible documentary. I think that the person who is behind the documentary tried to create a story that makes sense, but there's a lot of information for people who do not follow up all the details of the Venezuelan situation that are really difficult to know. For example, the three main characters of the documentary that are Venezuelans, Christopher Figueira, Luis Ortega, and Rafael Ramirez, they were responsible of what happened in Venezuela. Actually, Luis Ortega was the general prosecutor for 10 years. And the crime that she mentioned, the extrajudicial killings of 8,000 people, those killings happened while she was as the general prosecutor of Venezuela. And she never said anything. She said something when she left, and a year after she went to the ICC to present the documentation, but she never said a word. And we're talking about 8,000 people being killed on her watch. So, which is more her morality to talk bad about Maduro when she was, she was not doing, the person who was responsible to investigate those murders, she never said anything while she was in power. The other guy is Rafael Ramirez. Come on, the numbers of money being stolen in the last 20 years is around, I think it's $40 billion. But under his watch in the oil industry is around 11 billion that basically disappeared. And now he's there crying because the Maduro destroyed the Chavez revolution. That actually the Chavez revolution, Maduro is just a continuation of a guy who died because he got sick and he died from cancer. But basically what happened is just the script that Chavez wrote 26 years ago. He actually, I one day met a guy who was a minister just for a few months at the beginning during Chavez, and he told me that as soon as he arrived to power in the 2000s, early 2000s, they fly to Cuba and they have a meeting with Fidel and all the ministers. This is January of the 2000s, just the same month that he arrived to power. And he said to all the ministers, this is what I want for Venezuela. This is what I want for Venezuela. I want to create this model in Venezuela. That's what happened. Tell me which is different between Cuba and Venezuela today. Zero. And in general terms, of course. And take into account that Maduro is in jail now, but 1 month ago. So basically, and actually the reason why Maduro was chosen is because he was as being said correctly in the documentary, the best student of the Cuban revolution or system or dictatorship. And that's why he was chosen. He was chosen by the Cubans. The Cubans had been behind all of this since day zero. Because basically, just imagine this, where Chavez died? In Cuba. And when Maduro was detained, the majority of people that were killed during the detentions were Cubans. Why are other countries taking care of the security of a president? Actually, those who are in control of the security of a president know what he eats, where he is, with who he has meeting. The Cubans have been controlling 100% of the whole operation of the Venezuela. That's why the Maduro regime and the Chavez regime were so successful, because they were basically led by the Cubans who have survived for more than 65 years, who have won during the Cold War. And you imagine all the president has passed in the US and they're still in power, even today. So I just want to say that it's very, very difficult to hear from these people who were responsible of all of this, who worked with Chavez for so many years to create this disaster, to then, 24 years later, to see them in a documentary crying because, you know, they fight with Maduro.
Can I,
so, yeah.
Well, thank you both for the sort of insider's view and revealing the motivations of some of the principal characters. Is this me making all this noise?
I'll just correct for the record,
Yeah.
and this is facts that you can check up, documented, amply available as public sources. Sanctions in Venezuela first occurred, economic sanctions first occurred in 2017. The complex humanitarian crisis, the massive shortages of food, medicine, the hyperinflation, which ended up being 400,000% interannual hyperinflation in 2016. All that happened before the first economic sanctions were imposed upon Venezuela. The massive exodus of Venezuelans began in 2014. So there is a big distortion of the sequence of events. I understand every story needs a villain, every story needs, you know, an arc, a narrative arc that is convenient for it to be compelling. But I can tell you who the villain of the story is later on.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that. I'd just like to go to Claire for a moment,
Yeah,
because
just to what Emiliana is doing, I was checking yesterday on my old articles, and I think the first story I wrote about the desabastecimientos, of the things that are missing in grocery stores, is 2013. So, and I was exactly thinking that it was way before the sanctions. It was just mismanagement of the money, and everybody knew it. So, yeah, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was going to ask you, is it difficult to report on Venezuela? We were hearing that there was an absence of true Venezuelan voices. I thought they did a good job of explaining the geopolitics and how countries can be dependent.
No, so
Oil can be a curse on a society, as it has been the Dutch disease in a bunch of places, Saudi, etc. But is it, Claire, you have reported from the region, is it hard to get in and tell those stories, or were they just lazy?
This is something I've never been able to do because I haven't had the press visa since 2017. And so I've done the exact opposite, which was talking only to the people. Like, I did talk to Guaidó, obviously, because he was opposition. I interviewed Luisa Ortega, I think in 2019, when she was hiding in Bogotá, because obviously I would never have had access to her in Caracas when she was still in power. So it's gotten more and more difficult. The first time I went was, I think, 2002. And then I started going back from 2012. And there were some stories that were delicate, like anything about the problems of food, et cetera, that was already, when you were asking those questions in supermarkets or trying to take those pictures of the empty stores, that was already bad. And you need to remember, in 2010, there was a man called Franklin Brito who died in a hunger strike because his land was grabbed from the regime. And so there's a whole story about food missing. It's not only the sanctions, it's mismanagements and land grabbing and production grabbing. And then I was reading my story from 2013 around oil, and there are almost no names in this. Like, no one would give their name. No one who was working for the oil company, for PDVSA, would testify with their names. But, you know, at the time, I could still kind of work. You knew when you were going to some places in Caracas, close to the Cuartel de la Montaña, where Chavez was buried, you knew you were being watched. And what you've seen in the scenes with the lady with the T-shirt, you know she's reporting anything to the party. When you interview anyone, and you actually have to be careful that you're not putting that other nice lady who says, stop sending us text messages, you need to be really careful not to put her in harm's way. You know people can be in danger because of you. But then in 2017, when I covered the protests against the Constituyente, so they were really killing people on the streets. Like, I went to funerals of students who've been protested with their hands in the air, and they stopped giving visas to reporters altogether. So people kept reporting, but with press visas. But people were arrested. I know people who were sent to the Helicoide, which is a place I knew of because I interviewed maybe 15 opponents who were tortured in the Helicoide, which is you've seen that building at the beginning of the movie. So people cross the border through Colombia, which is not great because then you're taking a lot of risks. In 2019, I reported about the FAIS, who were special forces who were snatching people from, for example, Petare, who's a zone close to Caracas. And ultimately, like, I tried to go back a couple of weeks ago. I went to Cucuta, the border, a lot of people crossed. They arrested 13 foreign journalists. It's like, you made it for 2 hours before being detained, interrogated, and then sent back.
So, big question, what's changed? Is Venezuela free now? Where does it go? How have you been feeling these past weeks? And are you heading home?
I want to, as soon as possible, yes. I wake up every morning and go to bed every night dreaming of being able to go back to my home in Caracas, which I hope that everyone here can come visit soon. I'm obviously extremely encouraged by the fact that our murderous dictator is now facing justice, or will face justice, as will his wife, who is also a very perverse figure that nobody really ever talks about, but she's also responsible for the entire repressive structure and just the breathtaking corruption.
Well, those structures are still in place. Right?
That has taken place in Venezuela. They are, but they're slowly being dismantled. I think, I don't know how much you've all been following what has been happening over the past few days in terms of release of political prisoners in Venezuela, people taking to the streets. Slowly but surely, civil society is once again becoming more emboldened. There's sort of a snowball effect happening. Tomorrow is Youth Day in Venezuela. It's a yearly Day of the Youth, and there's protests and marches that are set to happen in all 24 states of Venezuela, which is something that I cannot emphasize enough how inconceivable would have been a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago.
And is that under American pressure? And will that continue?
Well, I mean
maybe it's...
Yeah. So my opinion of what is happening right now, I think it's very, very important to hear from Venezuelans what we think about another country arriving with helicopters, taking not the president, but a guy who represents himself as president. He didn't win the last election, and brought to the United States. I have been fighting against this horrible regime for 24 years.
That makes you really old, Rodrigo.
Yeah. I was 18 the first time that I saw someone being killed in front of me, at the same place, just in front of where I was. And I'm being detained, I'm being detained by the regime. I've seen people get killed, tortured, etc.
Is that, yeah.
And I think that there was no other way to get rid of this regime. These people think that killing is part of their fight. A friend the other day said that the dictatorship of Maduro was like a combination of the guerrilla of Colombia. It's like a sum between the guerrilla of Colombia and the dictatorship of Cuba. So these are their values. On the other hand, you have student movements and civil society and, human rights defenders.
Journalists.
And there've been,
It was almost an impossible fight to win. So I think this was the only way that we were not going to be the next Cuba with 65 years of dictatorship.
I think it's also important to note, it's not lost on anyone that the framing of the documentary is pinning it as a fight between the United States and Venezuela. And what it actually is a fight between a dictator and 30 million Venezuelans who have been held hostage for over 25 years.
What is the role of the United States in all this?
Well, the United States captured our dictator. He's now sitting in a federal detention facility in Brooklyn, and is clearly making the remnants of the regime comply with what has been announced as a transition to democracy that will, if we have anything to do with it, which we will as the Venezuelan people, will end with free and fair elections.
And Claire, looking forward, what kind of stories? I imagine you want to go down there again. And what
I
kind
really
of
want
stories?
to, but for now,
What questions would you bring? What stories do you want to investigate?
Obviously, first of all, political prisoners, because this is. I don't think people imagine what it's been like. People being tortured, and I'm not going to describe the techniques, but I used to cover Africa, and this is the kind of things I would hear in Chad, or this is. Those are really cruel, crazy situations. I mean, I remember interviewing a mayor in Táchira who ran away when they came for him, and so he left through the garden, and they took his 18-year-old son, 17-year-old son instead of him. He thought they wouldn't because he was not in politics. He was jailed for 2 years. I mean, this is the kind of situations that you have.
They've jailed 2-year-old infants.
Yeah.
They've jailed babies. Like a 2-year-old little girl spent 5 days in jail last year because they were holding her as ransom so that her family would come to the prison and they could catch them as well.
So that this would obviously be the first thing. There would be interesting angles to how do you secure oil installations, because it's a very appealing idea. But the ELN, the Colombian guerrilla, is now in this area too. So it's not gonna be easy. And yes, I think the security situation. I was in Cucuta. That's their main concern right now, is that they have all those people displaced from the Catatumbo, who's at the border on the Colombian side, but then all this cocaine goes to Venezuela and being shipped by. It's a huge network, and so this is going to be a big story. I mean, it's something we don't see on the news here, but it's a real war that's going on right now. Like hundreds of thousands of people displaced.
Emiliana, you were talking to me. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just want to say that I don't think we want to do this transition alone. This regime has been creating an alliance with Iran, China, Russia, Hezbollah, Hamas, like so many criminal groups, all the guerrilla, like LN, FARC. And we don't want to have them in the opposition without any support. Actually, some people criticize that Delcy Rodriguez is the person who is in power right now, but the truth is she represents the regime. And the militaries, it's not like you just put tomorrow Edmundo Gonzalez in power, and these militaries who have been in power for 25 years, now they're going to be loyal after being loyal to a horrible dictatorship for so long. So actually, I think it's very, very difficult to have a transition without the support of the United States. Because I think only the military threat is the reason that now half of the political prisoners are free.
Absolutely.
That now they're talking that they're going to close the Helicoide, the center where the biggest center of where political prisoners go to be in prison, where I was in prison many years ago. And this is happening just because of the military threat. And I'm happy that this is happening, but I think this relationship, this alliance with the U.S. is going to last. Even after elections, even when we have a new president, even when Maria Corina, who has 80% of popularity, should win the next election. I don't think we can do this alone, because these people, again, they believe that killing is it's a tool when you do politics. Like they use it as a method to arrive to power. They made a coup d'etat 20 or 30 years ago, and they failed, and they find another way to arrive to power. They have like this villain mind, like criminal minds. And imagine to have opposition in a democratic country is difficult. Imagine that those who oppose you are actually criminal, who stole all these $40 billion, and where is that money? And how they already have enough resources to, finance any coup d'état or any opposition to the next president.
Rodrigo, I want to jump in, and you were saying we can't have the transition to democracy without the support of the United States. The United States, I think we all know, is no longer in the democracy building business, post-Afghanistan, post-Iraq. When Trump, however, welcomed Guaido to Congress, he spoke of him as the true and legitimate leader. Since the beginning of January, he has spoken of managing the oil and the economy, but there's been no mention at all of transitioning to democracy. So what are you looking for from the United States in concrete terms, and do you think it's forthcoming?
Well,
there has been mention. There has been mention. Secretary Rubio said as much during his Senate hearing 2 weeks ago, as well as when he was giving the press a briefing. Democracy was the end game. Transitions are messy. I think in the case of Venezuela being, a narco state that has been infiltrated and invaded by so many different factions and like Rodrigo said, foreign powers, intertwined with mafias that are competing agendas of the government does not have the monopoly of violence in Venezuela right now. 60% of the territory is still controlled by different armed, non-state armed groups. So
what do you want the United States to do then?
I trust the United States for this transition for Venezuela. I've never been a Trump supporter. I actually almost said that almost provoke people to vote for Kamala because it's difficult to predict what Trump is going to do. And maybe because of his personality, he did that's the only thing that the only action that it was necessary to liberate the country. And I hope they're going to do the same with Cuba, and they're going to do the same with Nicaragua. Dictatorships are like cancers, and until you take them all off, we're not going to be safe. And at the same time, of course, things are wrong in this country. But if you compare what is happening in this country with our reality, this is Disneyland. Actually, that's why you have Disneyland. We don't have Disneyland, right? So basically, your institutional problems and your lack of democracy in this country is 1% of the problems that we have. We have the other 99% of problems. And of course, this is the most important democracy in the world. It has to be an example. And Trump is maybe not the most, it's kind of very, very more populist, more, not very democratic, in general terms. But if you compare that to us, and I think you are not understanding where we are. We are in the medieval times. I don't know what you're talking about. The U.S. is the 1,000 years above in difference of the institutions where Venezuela is right now. I don't know if I'm explaining correctly. It's sometimes it's difficult. I'm going to end with this. Every time I go to an Uber and I hear people complain about the U.S., they say, the U.S. is the worst country unless you travel to other countries and you understand that it's not that bad. And that's the thing. All the critics to this administration, and this is a dream for us, that we're being held by this country. And that's the reason I think we're going to be free. I don't think we could have a right freedom other way.
I think you would be hard-pressed, to find a Venezuelan right now who, except for Delcy, who is not grateful to the United States of America for what they did for us. I think, like you've seen, I want to show you, the tally sheets from the election. We have tried everything, and the world has given their backs to us for the longest time. Crimes against humanity have been documented for decades in Venezuela. There's terrorism of state that occurs, that is practiced by the regime, and yet, for the longest time, all we got was, tweets from the European Union about how they were so very concerned. Again, I think you'll have a very hard time not finding, regardless of their political ideological stance, a Venezuelan who is not right now
Can I just jump
happy.
in for a second? Because I asked you to bring in those, I wanted you to tell that story. We'll come to the audience in about 5 or 10 minutes if you have questions. to keep the conversation going. But why don't you tell me what those are about, just to give us an idea of what you were involved in the elections and the efforts to stop fraud, which we're not.
So I have with me just a small sample of what ended up being over 25,000 tally sheets that over 600,000 Venezuelan volunteers were involved in collecting.
You were one of them?
I was not collecting tally sheets, but I was
overseeing.
kind of overseeing the effort, yes.
Yeah.
These are tally sheets that were every single one of them has the same results. It doesn't matter where they come from, rural, urban centers. Some came from like very remote places in the jungle and had to be taken to processing centers by canoe. Some had to be in Táchira State, taken to processing centers by mule. But in a matter of 24 hours, we were able to, after months of clandestine and big, efforts in hiding to train these 6,100 plus volunteers, were able to collect 85% of the official tally sheets. These are tally sheets that are printed by the official machines that the regime uses for elections. They have the same results, which is 70-30 in favor of the opposition candidate, Edmundo González Urrutia, who ran in place of Maria Corina Machado, who was barred from running after she won the primaries. And they're all signed. The best part about this is that they're all signed by everyone. By law, every coalition has the right to have a witness, a testigo, present at the polling station, right? So Maduro had his testigo, and so did the opposition coalition. And every single tally sheet is signed and ratified by testigos from both coalitions. So
Proof of fraud.
This is the proof of victory.
You were telling me proof of fraud and victory, and also thirst for democracy and a tradition of elections, as you were telling me.
Absolutely, and it just I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the hundreds of thousands of anonymous heroes that risked their lives, and some were killed because these tally sheets hold the truth. And I think there's no more heroic or epic example of how a people has such a democratic vocation than the amount of risk and danger that went into every single person getting every one of these tally sheets to be processed, scanned, and put up on a website for the world to see in less than 24 hours. It's extraordinary.
It is.
And I'm deeply grateful.
I want to just sort of conclude by asking you all sort of the same question. How do we get back to more tally sheets, to new elections? And I want to turn to Claire, who's been around a bunch of countries. I know it's being unfair. No, but because you've been in Africa, you've been in a lot of countries in transition. What are the techniques and things one can do? I mean, I think of like the, South Africa, Truth and Reconciliation. How do you get a society to move forward, to get one political system or regime to step aside, what can be done?
Correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the ones who know, but it looks like Jorge Rodriguez a couple of days ago said he was not planning on having any elections in the near future.
I don't think he gets to decide.
I mean, and we've been asking that question in the White House too. We've been asking Caroline Leavitt, and she says it's not, like they can't give a date, it's not. But it's also true that in countries in transition, it's not the first thing you do when you have to rebuild everything, justice, education, everything, hospitals. So now your question on democracy in the US, it's been clearly framed as an operation for energy and oil, that this, the envoy that they have these days in Caracas is in charge of energy. That's a pretty clear symbol. So if democracy doesn't get in the way of it, why not? But that's not what the US is saying they want to do in Venezuela. That is, they say they want access to the oil, and that might mean having democracy because it would give them easier access. That's possible, but I can't read in the future.
Rodrigo or Emiliana?
I'll just state that I think the the actual situation right now, like, first of all, Venezuelans, we really want that oil to be pumped out of the ground and start to be sent and exported again. As you saw, the entire oil industry of the highest reserves in the world is completely defunct right now. And so we need massive capital investment. And that can only happen if there is an ecosystem that is rife for long-term investment that can guarantee investors, not only American, but hopefully from all over the world, that their investments will be safe, that they will not be expropriated, that they will not be seized. And I think that legitimacy of the public powers, which are now co-opted, like, I need to remind everyone that the National Assembly, the Supreme Court, the moral branch, which is our ombudsman, the prosecutor general, I mean, every single branch of government in Venezuela right now is co-opted by the same corrupt narco regime that has been running the country for the past years. So there's a lot that needs to be fixed and adjusted in order for there to be truly free, fair, and transparent elections in which every single Venezuelan can participate. There's at least 9 million Venezuelans around the world somewhere. We don't know where they are. We need to audit the electoral register to make sure that people who were not allowed to vote, who were previously disenfranchised, can be added to it. But that's the end game. And like I said at the beginning of our conversation, the people it's the people who are going to make it happen. The people who are absent from this documentary are who are going to eventually make it happen. I have no doubt of that.
Thank you for speaking on their behalf. Rodrigo.
I'm not afraid of the time frame. I think one of the few critics that I have to this administration right now, they haven't said any time frame of how things are going to develop. Actually, I'm publishing tomorrow an article at the Bush Center Institute talking that, we want to see how this is going to happen. Because I think that the elections should happen or at the end of this year or at the beginning of next year. But I think the Venezuelan society needs to have this time frame as a reference and commit to that. Because the regime are very good trying to avoid an escape from negotiations.
And buying time.
Buying time. But guys, I'm not afraid of this situation at all because we are not politicians, we're activists. We have been activists because after 25 years not being in power, you're just an activist. You're not a politician. And now if we have to deal not only with the regime that now is being kind of led somehow by the US, but also have to deal with the United States, this is a dream come true again to us. Like, come on, now for the first time we have to protest against a democracy, like protesting here in the United States to put pressure, so we can put pressure on Venezuela. This is the dream. Just 2 months ago, the only people who we could pressure was the regime, and they kill you at the minute that you go to the streets or they put you in jail. So now it's like we're living this dream of finally transitioning to a democracy. I can see that this is unstoppable. Okay. It is unstoppable. And the other thing that I'm sure is unstoppable, not only because of the commitment of the Venezuelan population who risked their life, went to vote. More than 70% of the people voted for against the regime while a dictatorship was in power. But we have the stronger leader that we could imagine. Like Maria Corina Machado, it's another dream come true. Like look where we are. She managed to resolve a conflict of 25 years. She found a way how to have primaries, to have an election, to win the election, to demonstrate the results, now to convince the United States to capture Maduro. And look what she did, no? Just to demonstrate her commitment to the cause. She gave her medal of the Nobel Peace Prize, not because she didn't want it. It's to demonstrate that she doesn't care anything about else. She just cares about freedom for Venezuela. That's all she cares about. And that's why I'm sure she's not like waiting for the United States to lead the transition as they wish. She's not that person. If she were that person, we were not here today. So with this variables in this equation, transition is unstoppable, and a right to democracy is unstoppable.
All right, from unbreakable to unstoppable.
Exactly.
Some questions, if anybody has one. I think over here. Yeah. Can't see everybody.
And I'd just like to encourage everyone in this room, when you leave and you tell your friends that what you did, if any time something about Venezuela should arise, I think the answer should always be, ask a Venezuelan. Just please, always ask a Venezuelan. There's lots of us everywhere nowadays.
All right.
First of all, thank you all for your courage, Emiliana, Rodrigo, and Claire. I assume that you were not born in Venezuela, but you've been in the country for multiple years, and that takes a lot of courage. And I want to touch base on something that Emiliana mentioned at the beginning, and I think it's really important, but my question is probably for Claire, because maybe the Venezuelan voices in the documentary were not so present, but at the same time, that scene with the woman being interviewed and another woman behind her with the party, the government party shared, like watching, observing. I think I read between the lines on something that you said, that's basically like a metaphor for the country. Like the people, even this one that was grateful to the regime for many things, for, I don't know, welfare plans, etc. Maybe that's a metaphor, but my question is, what do you feel in this scene? Like how much of this is authentic gratitude towards the regime, or maybe that woman was also a victim of the regime?
I mean, you can see, as you're saying, there is somebody from the party, someone they would call a sapo, someone who's going to tell on them, right next to her. So obviously she's not going to say anything against the regime. Now, that old generation, and I'm not sure where this was shot, but if it was in Petare, or you did find some people among the older generation and the very humble people who really benefited from all the programs, and they were still, I think, very grateful. You had people who could all of a sudden study. I remember, I reported, I think in 2012 or 13, in Ciudad Caribia, which was a sort of huge complex of buildings not very far from the airport that was entirely subsidized. Like, no one paid for anything. And when I naively asked the question, like, how do you guys go to work in Caracas because the road was not finished to go to the, and they're like, oh no, we don't work. Like, no one works here. So and some of those people before this would be, living on the street or something. So you had people who were genuinely grateful. They also had access to some kind of healthcare because of the Cuban doctors, which they wouldn't have had if they are not grateful to the party and if they don't vote the right way. So then it's a mix, what do you really believe? What do you do by fear? It's a mix of both.
Can I just compliment you, Claire, by saying, I mentioned to you that I thought there was a true villain to the story, and that woman with the red T-shirt, she is what we call la vieja del club.
Yeah.
Every neighborhood has a party official who is not only responsible for deciding who gets subsidized food in moments where there have been, starvation crises, but also who knows where you go, what you do, what you buy through this card that has been facilitated by Chinese technology. And it's basically surveillance of your entire behavior habits that are then used to extort people, with hunger. And outside of every single polling station, every single time we have an election, there is La Vieja del Club, who is there making sure, or at least trying to make you believe that she knows who you're voting for. And it's just a permanent blackmail in a form of social control. And that figure of La Vieja del Club is I can't overstate how diabolical that person has become in the lives of people.
And the nutritional value of the clap at the end was absolutely terrible. So
When you got it, because sometimes you wouldn't get it.
It's really sad that people
just give somebody else a chance to ask a question, because I think, yeah, anybody else? Gentleman in white.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your conversation. My question is on, because Maduro's on trial, however, there's people that also took part in just what you were talking about, like the Prosecutor General and the Ministry of Oil. What would true justice look like for the Venezuelan people?
Do we put do people go on trial?
Yes. So
A reckoning?
basically, did you see, which is the movie of Argentina, 1984? The movie of how they trial the juntas, the dictatorship in Argentina? I think something like that, at least for me. I've been working with the International Criminal Court for the last 10 years. And we were very disappointed about the role of the ICC with the Venezuelan situation. Actually, we discovered, and one of the things that helped me to discover is that I one day was walking in the streets of The Hague, and I encountered the prosecutor, and he presented his sister-in-law. And some months later, we saw the sister-in-law defending the regime at the same court. So in one side was the prosecutor of the ICC accusing the regime, and the other side, his sister-in-law defending the regime. So we didn't want to make that public at the beginning, but when we saw that the arrest orders were not being issued, and we said, okay, let's make this public because this is not moving, nothing is happening. And we made it public, and actually 1 year after that, he had to step down from the Venezuelan case because of that. But definitely the court failed to avoid something like that to happen. What I'm saying is, like, at some point we fight so hard to find international justice, and at this point I think we might try to find help, to continue to see if other institutions like the ICC can help us. But I think we need to do like an internal trial who will try to avoid these people to just make a documentary, because for me, Rafael Ramirez financed this documentary. It's so obvious. It's so obvious because there is like a poor guy, like the poor guy in the Maracaibo Lake saying, oh, the last time that someone did something for Venezuelan oil industry was when Ramirez was here. Like, come on. Like, it's so obvious, all the tricks. And he's the first person to appear. So, and he lied. Like, what he said is that, oh, Chavez reduced critical poverty from 70% to 7%. No, actually it was in 25%. And they reduced it for a period of time to 8%, but that was unsustainable because it was just because of the boom of the oil price. That's it. It was a bubble.
And then our GDP contracted by 75%, which is the largest GDP contraction of any nation in a non-wartime scenario.
And they said, no, we construct houses for 9 million people. That's that's 1/3 of the population. That's like, constructing 1/3 of all the houses of the country, and that never happened. So it's crazy how these people try to laundry their reputation by creating documents and documentaries. But the truth is, justice, it's going to happen. We will not have to, I don't think we don't have to compromise anything at this point. I think we will have full democracy in 1 or 2 years, and we will start a trial that will tell the truth of what really happened. And if people are still in Venezuela, they're going to trial. If doesn't, we will find a way at least to make accountability of what happened. And actually, we are working to find funds from the oil industry for reparation of all these victims, because justice is not only about knowing what happened and trying to put in prison those who were responsible, but also the reparation of the thousands of victims of this horrible dictatorship have to be in honor.
We have a transitional justice expert in the room, but I just want to add.
Okay, well, why don't we can we see a question about, can you just comment on transitional justice?
Yeah, I just wanted to.
Can you hear her? Can everyone hear her?
Maybe could we give this a moment of microphone? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, because you asked about what justice means for the Venezuelan people. And I have been working with victims of human rights violations since 2017. Most of them, there are the relative of those who were killed during the protest. And actually, after the detention of Maduro, some of those parents called me or text me, and they told me, Genesis, this is the first time that we feel that we are getting close to justice. We never felt that before, because even when they get recognitions from international bodies or courts or organizations that confirm that the regime committed human rights violations in Venezuela, that never transformed into something real or something like feasible for them. And for the first time, seeing Maduro behind bars was for them a real act of justice. So I have learned that when for many years justice have been denied, then you don't think about justice in a formal way, but you create your own meaning of justice. And for them, this is justice. Why? Because Maduro is responsible for all the policies that at the end attack all the Venezuelan people.
Thank you. I think I saw someone in the very back. Thank you.
I'm just curious if you could explain a little bit about.
Just if you could just wait for the microphone. There we go. We can't hear that. Thank you.
I feel like when we, question what's going on in the United States, and we have doubts about the federal government and what is really happening, what are facts and fiction. There's just an awful lot of fear and doubt going on right now, although you say, democracy here and democracy in Venezuela, there's no comparison. But I feel that the strength in the United States maintaining democracy is the fourth estate, and really the power of the press and journalists. And I know Mr. Spicer is one of those people who maintains the strength of information and getting it out to the people. Is that totally suppressed in Venezuela right now? I mean, is there a kind of a reignition of information and access to information?
So it's funny you should ask. Thank you for your question. Just this week, for the first time since 2021, I believe, a few foreign correspondents were granted visas to go to Venezuela for the first time to report from the ground. From what I hear from my former colleagues in different legacy media outlets, it's been a highly choreographed sort of 5-day long affair. It's not like you can get much done in terms of like deep journalistic investigative work in 5 days. They're kind of being shuttled around here and there. I think part of it is to give the appearance that there is some sort of opening to the free press and certain welcoming of freedom of expression. Maduro has jailed 59 journalists, members of the press, since he first got into power. And there's around 20 Venezuelan journalists in exile. But again, I think this opening of civil society and what is happening with the political prisoners being released and people slowly becoming more and more emboldened to speak out. Like, I have been just incredibly impressed by how one of our mutual friends who just got out of prison 2 days ago, just immediately, that's the first thing he said when he called us was, I want to talk to the press. I want to talk to the press. There's a fearlessness, and an emboldening of Venezuelans right now that I think is going to hopefully, make this watershed moment even more of a river of truth.
Would there be
Well, it is so true, the importance of freedom of expression. The destruction of democracy was the destruction of the freedom of expression in the country. So right now, what has happened is the release of political prisoners, but now some of the media are starting to tell what is happening. Like now some TV stations are starting to, for example, tomorrow there is a protest with students, and now some TVs are trying to interview them. That never happened in the last 5 years, and it's happening right now. So actually we're trying to put pressure also into this administration to say, thank you for what you're doing for the political prisoners. And by the way, please ask the regime to change the director of CONATEL, who is the institution who controls the media, to change it for a more neutral guy. so the media can start explaining what is happening. And just to give you how impressive the winning the election was 1 year ago, Maria Corina and Mundo Gonzalez, they didn't have even one appearance on TV. One spot on a radio. One, never. And we won with 70%. And the people who were outside of Venezuela, that, by the way, are 9 million, they were not allowed to vote. That basically those who left because they were so tired of being in, so basically there are 90% of the opposition. So yeah, there wasn't freedom of expression. Now, for the first time, we're starting to see little shift and an act of bravery because they don't know where is the limit. People doesn't know where is the limit right now.
Again, I just want to reiterate, a little over a month ago, discussing politics in private in Venezuela was just unheard of. Like, people were just panicked, even for discussing politics like in the privacy of your own home. And now we're seeing people, give interviews out in the street. That is, I mean, it's just inconceivable. It would have been more
Like
than a
you're
month
saying
ago.
you wouldn't have come and done this.
I would have not been here today in front of
7
you.
weeks ago, whatever. Yeah.
Is there maybe possibly final question? I don't know how. Yes. This lady, person, sorry, I can't, there's light in my eyes. This gentleman, person with their hand up. There you are, thank you.
I was just wondering how you think the social, economical inequalities in Venezuela are going to evolve. If they're going to back to what they were before Chavez, with American involvement increasing and companies like Palantir and Exxon getting a lot of power.
Well, again, Venezuela is a country in ruins right now, in ruins, in every single dimension, in every single sphere. Everything needs to be rebuilt. We had a massive brain drain, a massive, human capital flight. Hopefully, Venezuelans will want to come back slowly and surely as things seem safer. Companies, obviously the entire point of the stabilization phase of this is to get foreign investment, which we need in order to rebuild, not only to get the oil industry back happening, but also to build the roads that get you to the derricks and to build the telecom structure. I'll put this in context for you. We have the largest oil reserves in the world, and yet we had a 7-day-long blackout, no power in the entire country for an entire week. So when I say that the country is in ruins, when Rodrigo mentioned that we come from medieval times, he's not overstating it. Everything needs to be done from zero, and hopefully that will create an environment where a lot of jobs will be created, a lot of wealth will be created, and eventually exports can be diversified, so we're not just like an oil-dependent petrostate.
Anybody else? I think I have a final question myself. I don't mean to be so rude, but our Venezuelan guests were saying it's time for the Venezuelans to be heard. So can I give you the last word? What do you want to tell people who are finally paying attention to your country? I'll start with you.
Thank you. Thank you for paying attention to our country after so long. It took Delta Force extracting Maduro from a bunker for that to happen, but I'll take it. Please continue to speak out. The plight of the Venezuelan political prisoners right now is something that there's still 600 souls who should have never been behind bars, who are still detained. We want them out, we want them free, and we want them unconditionally free. And that's gonna lay the groundwork for a free and democratic Venezuela sooner than I think everyone expects.
Rodrigo.
I want to say also thank you to this country, because I've been living in exile for the last 10 years in this country, and after what happened in Cuba, after 65 years in a dictatorship, seeing what happened in my country and seeing that we did everything and nothing worked, you just realize that it's almost impossible to get rid of a dictatorship. It's not that, okay, you can find a guy like Gandhi or put someone in prison like Mandela for 28 years, and so things like that. Of course, that could happen. But even if you study what happened in Serbia, when Old Poor movement get rid of Milosevic, actually that happened after NATO bombed Serbia, Belgrade. So these regimes, they use violence. That's the most important tool. So that's the language that they understand. And to think that to respect another country and to not intervene, is that their problem, is the solution? I think that's miserable. It's not understanding that people are suffering, and it's so hard to get rid of a dictatorship. So we're always going to be grateful for what happened the 3rd of January.
Thank you both. Thank you to the audience, to French in Motion, Bradamant Center, NYU, especially to our two guests, Claire, you as well, but especially to our Venezuelan guests who have come here and shared their insights.
We're going to become Venezuelan soon.
Yeah.
Ojalá, ojalá.
Give me a round of applause.
Oh, I have one final thing to say. One final thing to say. This is very important. No matter what you hear, no matter what anybody tells you, arepas are Venezuelan.
They are.
Not Colombian.
Not Colombian, they're Venezuelan. Thank you.